So I finally caught up with the One Punch Man manga. I set out on this journey because I wanted to catch up to the manga chapters that the One Punch Man Season 3 anime is going to be covering, because I was not confident that Season 3 was going to be good. And when I see this, I often get criticism, but I want people to understand. I'm not saying the story is bad, it just all comes down to the animation, especially when you compare it to Season 1. And no one can tell me Season 2 and Season 3 of One Punch Man are on the same levels as Season 1, and that was all I and many fans wanted. But I digress. The last time I read the One Punch Man manga was when I was around chapter 100, and for One Punch Man manga readers, you know what that means. It means you get to read, spoiler warning if you haven't read the Monster Association arc, it means you get to read the many versions of the Child Emperor versus Phoenix Man fight. And I stopped reading at that point, but then Season 3 got announced, and like I said before, I had to catch up. So I caught up all the way to the latest chapter, which is, as of the recording of this video, chapter 217. And man, it has been one of the most enjoyable read-throughs I've ever had, on par with the first time I read the Kingdom manga, the solo leveling manhwa, and the Way of Kings fantasy novel. It was just so good, and this Season 3 of One Punch Man will be covering some of it. And I'll just say this, when it comes to the main important fight, Season 3 of One Punch Man actually has good animation, but everything else is just... So when it comes to Cosmic Garo versus Saitama and all the factors that make it great, such as the scale of their fight, with Jupiter's moon being shattered, with the emotional weight such as Garo stabbing Genos in front of Saitama, and the thematic depth of that fight, because the Saitama versus Cosmic Garo fight wasn't all just hype, it had subtextual relevance, with how Garo finally achieved his dream of being a monster that embodies fear to the point normal people can't literally stand face to face with him, because not only does he have a killer aura, but he literally emanates radiation that normal people can't handle. Garo achieved his dream, but at what cost? Garo accepted God's gift. For those of you who don't know, God is literally a character in One Punch Man, and he grants superpowers if you accept him. And even though Garo slapped away God's hand and he got powers regardless, he didn't lament his powers. Instead, he embraced it, unlike Saitama, who was also at the verge of achieving his dream being having someone he could have a proper battle with, but instead didn't find achieving his dream worth it if it meant Genos wouldn't be there to witness it. So he holds on to Genos' core and sacrifices this once in a lifetime chance of going all out. And man, that is just great storytelling. On one hand, you've got Garo, who is the fist that has accepted God, and on the other, you've got Saitama, who is the fist raised against God. This is the climax of the Monster Association arc, and in terms of story and art, it is superb. I just can't help but heap praise after praise for it. In the Season 3 anime, I don't think we'll be covering this part of the story, considering the rate which they are adapting the manga, unless we have massive amounts of cut content and we rush the heck out of this adaptation. I don't think Season 3 will reach the Saitama versus Cosmic Garo fight. And to be honest with you, my faith wavers a tad bit when it comes to Studio JC staff adapting the epicness I just witnessed in the manga, that epicness being Saitama versus Cosmic Garo. But considering the fact that for the really important scenes, JC staff actually put in the effort to make those scenes look good, I won't actually pass judgment yet. But if I had it my way and I was a member of the production committee for One Punch Man, I would advise that One Punch Man Season 4 be handled by a different studio, because I believe we won't get the Saitama vs Cosmic Garo fight until Season 4, because the Monster Association arc is packed. It is very long, but in my journey to catch up to the One Punch Man manga, the Saitama vs Garo fight wasn't the only thing that piqued my interest. One storyline that has me very intrigued is with the storyline of Super Alloy Darkshine. Super Alloy Darkshine has been a character that's just been in the background that we know nothing of up until the Monster Association arc where he gets to fight Garo. I have always viewed Super Alloy Darkshine as the superior version of Puri Puri Prisoner and Tank Top Master, a muscle-bound maniac, except that Super Alloy Darkshine is way better than them. And in the fight against Garo, we see that. We see how strong Super Alloy Darkshine is. He overpowered Garo in some instances of their fight, but Darkshine loses in a way I didn't expect him to lose. He loses not because of the physical battle, but instead the mental battle. Darkshine was overwhelmed by Garo's spirit to the point that Darkshine literally got scared of Garo during the battle. Garo realizes this and pities Darkshine and leaves him alone. That's a very disgraceful way for a warrior to lose. Being pitied is one of the worst feelings, even in real life after a fight. When you've got some bruises and people come and pity you, that really sucks. And that was a major blow to Darkshine's confidence. And we have a seed planted here. How is this lack of confidence that Darkshine is dealing with going to get resolved? But after that whole debacle, a lot of things happen, such as Saitama versus Cosmic Garo fight. We also get into the arc with the Psychic Sisters. Then there is the whole debacle with the Neo Heroes, and then we get into the Ninjas arc. And I'll be honest with you, Darkshine's story wasn't at the forefront of my mind when all this happened. We learn Darkshine has joined up with the New Hero Association. This New Hero Association that is trying to compete with the older association that Saitama belongs to. But Darkshine didn't join them as a hero but as a trainer. And there is this little moment where Metal Bat and Child Emperor meet Darkshine in the New Heroes headquarters and ask what happened to him. And there is this look on his face of nervousness and of inadequacy, and man, I can't wait to see where it goes. Because the thing with Darkshine is he's not losing fights because he's losing the physical fight. It's all a mental thing, such as his fight with Garo and also the time when he got acid on himself during the fight against the monsters. And mind you, that acid that got smeared on Darkshine was melting everything, and when it got on Darkshine, it didn't melt him, but regardless, he starts panicking. And this tells me that the problems he is facing is all psychological. And again, can't wait to see where it goes, because we've already had a seed planted with Sweet Mask in the Monster Association arc where he fights with the dominatrix monster Dues, and she shatters his face and alludes to the fact that he's a monster. And also during the fight against the dragon level monsters, we see Sweet Mask get ripped to shreds by them, fatal attacks that should have killed him, but he survives, strengthening the claim by Dues that he is a monster. And finally we get into Sweet Mask's arc in chapter 211 where he tries to convince Saitama to be a superhero who can meet public expectations. And during this arc, there is a moment where both Saitama and Sweet Mask are both in a Ferris wheel, and Sweet Mask confesses to Saitama his entire situation. The fact that he was a hideous man in the past, and since he was afraid of scrutiny from the public for his looks, he started doing his hero works with a mask on. But one day during his hero work, he accidentally has his mask fall off in front of everyone, but underneath that mask is a handsome guy. And this was due to his intense hatred he had to his own ugliness, and which was also a catalyst for him turning into a real monster. If you know One Punch Man, this types of stuff happen all the time. People wearing costumes and actually turning to what that costume represents. We've seen it with Phoenix Man, that dragon level monster who fought Child Emperor. He was a normal human who was wearing a bird costume until he actually became a real bird. Even with the lobster monster that Saitama faced in his flashback at the very beginning of the story, that monster tells us he was a human up until he couldn't remove his lobster costume. So I believe something similar went and happened with Sweet Mask. His intense hatred he has for his own ugliness turned him into a beautiful guy. But this process of turning handsome was actually monsterization that could easily shatter, and this is what we witness in Sweet Mask's arc. He is forced to fight this clown monster who gets stronger when people give give him more attention, and Sweet Mask struggles to beat him because his fight with this clown called Pesky Clown gathers more and more attention. And the thing that drove him to fight this pesky clown was because of Saitama's words that he told him in the Ferris wheel. And in the Ferris wheel, Sweet Mask was advising Saitama to care more about his public image, and Saitama didn't care at all about what he had to say, and Sweet Mask was furious, saying to him this is the reason why you have a funny hero name such as Caped Baldy, and that he would be even more popular than him had he cared about his public image, to which Saitama replies, isn't it more about what you are than how you're seen? And during Sweet Mask's fight with Pesky Clown, he recalls this conversation he had with Saitama, so he fights Pesky Clown to protect the innocent civilians, even if it means he gets exposed as a monster. Remember when the Dominatrix monster Dues shattered Sweet Mask's face in the Monster Association arc? Well, we get to see what really happens when the shattered pieces fall. We get to see the monsterized Sweet Mask who risked his exposure as a monster to protect people, and the crowd turns against him. The crowd that was cheering him on moments earlier are confused and disgusted with what they're seeing, and it's in live television. And Saitama sees this. He remembers what Sweet Mask had told him about his monsterization and how important public image is to him. So what does Saitama do? He goes towards the monsterized Sweet Mask and says to him that he is really cool. And ladies and gentlemen, that right there is why I love One Punch Man. What a great moment and what a beautiful story. If you're an anime only for the One Punch Man story, I hugely advise you to read the manga. It's one of the most enjoyable and beautifully drawn pieces of work out there. And yeah, if you've made it this far into the video, please consider subscribing to the channel. It will mean a lot. And with that said, see you guys in the next one.